book review on a book by Charles Swindoll called Saying It Well. And the book is basically on how to prepare and write a good sermon or speech. It has 10 chapters, and the first 3 chapters are autobiographical and talk about overall advice using his experiences as an example. In chapter 1, called The Calling, it talks about his time in the Marine Corps and his GIs for Christ and navigators. And this is when he first realized that becoming a preacher might be his calling. Second, the second chapter, Preparing, talks about once he knew what he wanted to do, he decided to learn everything he could on the subject, and that you should too, obviously. And that he does that at the Dallas Theological Seminary, and it talks about his time there. Now, chapter 3, entitled Going, talks about his first church. And it uses that as an example of how do you know when you're ready? How do you know when you're prepared enough to go out and actually start doing it? Now that these 3 chapters are done, and we get into chapter 4, entitled Digging, we get into the nuts and bolts of building a sermon. He uses one of his own sermons as an example, and he goes through his Monday through Sunday process. In chapter 5, Building, he continues the specifics, including like the title, introduction, body, and then finally we get to chapter 6, and he takes a step back and he goes back into autobiographical mode. In chapter 6 is entitled Praying. Now the next couple chapters are about elements which will help your sermon or speech come alive. Now in chapter 7, Illustrating, it's why to use illustrations and what makes an illustration good or bad, or what makes it effective or ineffective. In chapter 8, he talks about laughter and the importance of humor, but also when humor isn't appropriate. In chapter 9, titled Applying, he talks about after you've made your points, how does this apply to the audience today? And this is a very important part of any speech or sermon. And then finally ending, it talks about the importance, obviously, of ending strong. Now, after the 10th chapter, he concludes with something called Living It Well. And it's a personal story of tragedy and how allowing his audience to see his pain made him a better preacher, which is a lesson in authenticity. So anyway, in summary, what the book talks about is, know yourself, know what you want to say, then learn your subject, know your audience, figure out their needs, don't tell them what they already know, but also don't give them a message that doesn't apply to them. But most important, be authentic. And he does this using his own life lessons and methods as an illustration. So anyway, this has been a quick review of Saying It Well by Charles Swindoll. I enjoyed the book. I know more about Charles Swindoll because of the autobiographical nature of the book. I learned more about how to write and prepare a speech or sermon. And it's about 258 pages, so it's not that long. And I highly recommend it. Have a blessed day.